All right. So last night, I walked into TV room where my son is watching his favorite pirate show. It's Jake and the Neverland Pirates. You may have remembered it from when you were a kid. And he was so upset. He was crying. And I said, buddy, what's wrong? And he said, Bucky's gone. As it was Bucky's the ship. And he's like, Captain, he took Bucky. He took Bucky. And so he's crying, and I'm like, well, why are you crying? He says, well, I'm sad. I said, why are you sad? He says, and he points to the screen where the characters are crying, and he says, I'm sad because they're sad. And then he put the blanket over his head and he kept crying. And I'll tell you, I've never been so happy in my life. Okay? Because I'm working on a speech about empathy. And I walk into the room and my son gives me the best possible example. Okay? He was sad because he felt and identified with the sadness of the characters he was looking at. All right? And he doesn't know that everything works out in the end of these types of shows, right? It's a kid's cartoon. He doesn't know that. He's 4. All right. So we're going to talk about empathy today. There are some things that are beyond you and me, and beyond this right here, this sphere around you. All right? Let's take a look at a couple of things. It's the Milky Way galaxy. All right? It's a small world, but it's a big universe out there. Big universe. All right? The Milky Way galaxy, our planet, is a grain of sand in the beach that is the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy is a grain of sand in the larger Andromeda galaxy. And the Andromeda galaxy is a mere grain of sand in the galaxy that houses it. On and on and on for longer than we even know. So try to wrap your brain around that, and you can't, right? It does not compute smokes that come out of your ears, because you can't understand that. Nobody can, okay? But it's longer, bigger, grander, vaster than you. Here's a rather low-quality image, but it serves a purpose, okay? This is a clock of Earth's timeline, right? It's like a 24-hour clock. When we see it 0, that would be like the formation of the Earth, right? It's this big sort of molten ball. Right? We don't get to the first invertebrates until, 9 o'clock. Right? All of that is formation. Early on, you get some fossils of maybe some single-celled creatures. We don't get any creatures with even a nucleus until like 7 o'clock. All right? But then we look. Hey, we got a fish, at 10 o'clock. That's not bad. Then we get a couple of frogs, right? Maybe a crocodile, as we're getting towards like 11:50. First mammals, 11:57. Right? Look at the humans. Look at us, 11:59 and 59 seconds and 9/10. Not even a blip. Right? Not even a blip. How about your lifetime? But you have an electron microscope, because you're going to need it to put it up on that thing. Bigger than you. Bigger than me. What we want to talk about here is, what do we do with that information? How does that information work for us in our lives? And help to tell us, where is our place in that Milky Way galaxy that's a grain of sand on a grain of sand on a grain of sand beach, right, that we can't conceive of? Where is our place where we are one micro hair at the end of that clock? And I would submit to you that cultivating empathy is crucial. to understanding your place and what your contribution is going to be during your time here on this planet, which is so infinitesimal, so brief, so small, and it can't even be conceived. So let's talk about outside of you, bigger than you. Look at the rest of the world, okay? There's what, 7.3 billion people? I've had folks tell me, and I know, I grew up, hockey was my life. What's your life in hockey? That's my life. Hockey's my life. Football's my life, all right? I understand what it's like to say that. Because it meant, 6 days a week, travel teams, you know what it's like to have hockey parents or football parents, what it's like to put in that time. It's your life. You watch it, you eat it, you sleep it, you breathe it, all right? There's 400 million football fans in this world. 400 million. There's about 3 million cricket fans. 3 billion cricket fans. 3 billion. 3 billion cricket fans. About 3.5 billion soccer fans. All right? About 2 billion table tennis fans. American football, hockey, most of the world doesn't even know what that is. And they couldn't care less. If they saw a game, they wouldn't know what they were looking at. Just like we see a cricket match, we don't know what we're looking at. But that's your life. Hockey's my life. Football's your life. But to the rest of the world, they don't even know what it is. All right? Bigger than you. What about the people in history and the people around us? Whether it's hit a golf ball at a house, 500 yards away, or, which would be a nice drive, by the way, maybe 400 yards that way, all right, or that way. You're going to hit the house of a hungry child, right? Or on the other side of the planet, where there are people suffering innumerable miseries, all right? What does that mean to you? All right? I pity them. What does that mean? It means I feel sorry for them. Well, then congratulations, right? And then you go on with your day. Now, pass me the bread. I feel sorry for them. That's pity. Sympathy? Well, we're getting a little closer. You feel some concern. And then you say, pass the bread. Okay? Right? Sympathy. Let's take it a step further. Let's look at empathy. All right? Empathy. Okay? You've put yourself in another person's shoes. You've taken off your shoes. You're walking a mile in their shoes, looking at what they see and what they feel. And you're feeling what they're feeling. Just think about that. Put yourself in another person's shoes, and you feel what they're feeling. You're not just concerned for them, you're feeling why they are in pain. You're feeling it. Well, how do you know? How do you know what it feels like to be a starving person or a child soldier or a slave, right? Slavery is unfortunately alive and well in this world. Right? What is that? You don't know what it feels like. Neither do I. Maybe you can imagine. Maybe you can, and you connect to that, and that's how you feel. But maybe there's something in you that can identify what it's like to feel trapped, what it's like to want. Maybe some of you have actually experienced hunger. So maybe you touch that place in you, and that helps you to identify or imagine what it would be like. And once you've done that, you put those shoes on, and you feel what they feel. Okay? I'm not talking about being possessed, where you need an exorcism. I'm talking about feeling it inside and letting that motivate you. All right? Let's just practice it for a second. Right? It's something simple. Let's look at this. You've felt this before. I have too. Think of the time when you felt this. What is she feeling right now, guys? What's she feeling? Defeat, right? Dejection. She's crushed. You felt that way. Remember it right now. And now put yourself inside of her head for a second. Can you feel it? Yeah. Old-time hockey boys. Okay. Look at that handsome devil. Right? A veteran. Right? You felt this too. You felt this too. Remember a moment in your life where you felt this. You scored the winning goal. You made that big hit. Right? You're the shortstop. You made that dive. You stopped the ball. You threw it the first guy's out. Game's over. You've done that. Right? Remember that right now. Take a second. Remember. Feel that moment. Okay, now put it in his head. You feel what he's feeling? That's empathy. Empathy doesn't have to be sad. It doesn't have to be sad. It's vicarious. It could be joy. In this case, it's joy. You can feel this, right? I know you can. Because I can too. I've felt this before, and it's a great feeling. And it's what keeps you playing sports, I know. It's what keeps you playing. Because you want that. You want that. All right. Let's go a little deeper. Let's go a little deeper. Who are these people? All right? Yeah. They're old ladies. We'll talk about why that's the reaction. I understand that reaction. We'll talk about that. They're old ladies. See how easy that is? Just push them to the margins. We don't need to deal with them anymore. Okay, but let's go a little bit deeper. I want you to squint at it a little bit. Blur your eyes. Picture the one that looks most like your own grandmother. Right? Most of you have known your grandmother. Or a grandmother, maybe two. Just squint and cut and paste that face onto that woman who looks most like your grandmother. Just play with it for a second. Okay, identify with that. All right, now, that's your grandmother, right? All right. That's somebody's grandmother. That's somebody's grandmother. Take that woman that you just transposed the face of your grandmother a second ago. Put your grandmother there. Put your grandmother surrounded by those bags. That's your grandmother. How does it make you feel? Can you feel it? It hurts. I feel it. I picture my grandmother there. I can do it right now. And I know you can too. And it hurts. If you didn't know where your grandmother is and someone gave you this picture and said, I found your grandmother, here she is. You saw that. Oh, your heart would bleed, right? You feel it? Or is that just an old lady? Or is it somebody's grandmother? That's why you should care. Because it is somebody's grandmother. It's your grandmother. It's everybody's. She's an everyone. Okay. Empathy is a natural response. It's built into us. We're selected for us. It's a selected trait. Just like strong legs, a strong back, strong biceps, a developed frontal lobe, language. These are natural selections that make us the species that has made us strong, that's helped us to survive. Empathy is part of that. I'm not making this up. This is social science. Right? Empathy is part of that. It's a selected trait. It's a positive trait. It's a positive trait that helps us to survive. Why would empathy be important to help us survive? I ask rhetorically. Why? Because we save and we care for those that we need. We keep them close. Our family, our elders, our children. And that helps the species continue. All right? Why do you care for the elders, right? So some animals, they kill off their parents once they get old. They kill them off. They don't need them anymore. Why do we have that instinct to have empathy for the elderly? Because it helps to keep the young alive. Because the way that we're built as clans people, as living in a group in villages, the elderly would help to take care of the babies and help them stay fed and clothed and warm and alive. It helps us as a species continue. And that doesn't happen without empathy. So natural selection gives us this. It gives us this. And it's a very strong desire, just like reproduction or hunger. Right? These are desires we have. We also have the desire to feel for others and to help others. This is built into us. Right? They can put people in MRI machines, right? And they can brain scan, they can chart their brain, show them pictures and that elicit an empathetic response, and they can see primitive centers in the brain lighting up. Those are the centers where empathy lives. It's some of the oldest parts of our brain, our reptilian brain. It's wired right into us. Now, with all of that wired right into us, how do we do such horrible things? Right? Those of you who have it in class, this is what we talk about. Right? The major question in my class, why do we keep killing each other? Right? If there's one theme that runs through human civilization, it's war and killing and violence. Why? If we're so empathetic, why would we do that? Right? How is our empathy lost? How is our empathy lost? Well, is it lost? I'm going to say it's suppressed. All right, except for a few. Talk about it. Except maybe it's suppressed. Maybe it's missing for some people. All right? Suppressed or missing. One of them is a natural phenomenon. Someone's born that way. But the suppressed, that's the scary one. That's the one that we have to look out for. That's the one that causes genocide. That's the one that causes massacre and war and cruel behavior. That's the one. This one that's suppressed. It suppresses our empathy. It ignores it. It puts it in a room, locks the door, and says, you are not going to dictate my actions. I'm going to act on some other nefarious instinct. So, the one that exists in nature as an aberration, right? 2.5%, maybe 3% in most of the population. Sociopathy, psychopathy, okay? People who have no capacity to feel empathy. They don't feel it. They don't feel it. If you look at some of the mass murderers, right? Some of the worst. You see interviews with them, like Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. If you've ever seen the interviews with him, brilliant. Brilliant. At one point, he took one of his victims and he was doing awful things, and which I don't need to speak about, but he was taping it, he was recording it. And then he would take it home and he would play the tape over and over again, watching this person suffer. Because he knew there was something wrong with him. He knew he was supposed to feel something, but so he kept watching it, wondering if he was going to feel something. And he said for one moment, for one instant, he felt something, and it scared him to death, and he shut it off and never did it again. There was something buried in him, but he was also born missing something that most people have. He's an aberration. Right? So let's put those people aside, because they're not all psychopaths, they being the people that do bad things. So what's the conditioning that I'm talking about? The conditioning that's so key to allowing these bad things to happen. Right? The big thing that we see is dehumanization. Right? How could you do that to another person? It's not a person. Right? Look at what Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propagandist, look at the way he painted the pictures of the Jews of Europe. Rats. Rats. Don't feel bad about killing them. They're not people. They're subhuman. They're rats. We kill vermin. They're infecting us. Look at that. Look at that. They had a name for it, Untermenschen. Subhuman, less than man, Untermenschen. All right? And that allowed them to kill, to overcome that empathetic response. When the person's begging for their life, they kill. Because it's not a person, it's a rat. It's a less than human. Right? It's a less than human. If we look at Rwanda, the propaganda in Rwanda compared the tribe, the Hutus, compared them to cockroaches. The same thing as Goebbels and the Nazis. Don't feel bad about killing them. They're vermin. They're not people. Right? Dehumanization. But I'll submit to you that there's a subtler, more dangerous form of dehumanization. And we do it every day. And that's marginalization. Marginalization. What that means is when you push people to the margins, as in margins on a piece of paper, they don't exist with us. Us, humans. They're on the margins. And when you marginalize, now that helps suppress that empathetic response that cares about the way somebody's feeling. Maybe steps in their shoes and feels it too. Because we put them to the margins. That's an old lady. That's a loser. He's a loser. That's a redneck. You think he's a redneck? That's just some job. That guy's a nerd. Think about what that is. What are you really saying? What is that really saying? Oh, you're treating him as though he's less than. You've heard that expression. You're treating him as though he's less than. Less than what? That phrase never gets completed. I'll submit to you that it's less than you. What that really means is human. You're treating that person like they're less than you. You're a human. You're treating that person like they're less than human. And that allows you to overcome that empathetic response that's wired into your reptilian brain, right? That's been here since 11:59, okay? Right? It lets you overcome that. It lets you overcome that because you push that person to the margins. Watch it. I don't have clean hands. Nobody has clean hands. But that's how people get hurt. That's how people get hurt. Because we don't protect those people on the margins. That guy's a bum. Right? Welfare queen. White trash. Trash? A person? Trash? Less than human. Not even human, just trash. Think about what that means. Okay? None of us have clean hands, and I'm not claiming to myself. But think about what that marginalization does and what it permits. How you can dismiss somebody. In the military has had to deal with this. All right? It's really hard to kill. There's a brilliant book recently called On Killing. It talks about how hard it is to kill. So how do you get normal, functional human beings to kill? Because what we found is, especially with new troops, we're pretty ineffective killers. All right? On the Battle of Gettysburg, although this is somewhat controversial, there were 27,000 muskets found unfired. Right? Some of those people obviously died. There may be some other reasons. But a lot of those people just dropped and ran. Right? Some of the muskets had as many as 10 balls jammed into them. 10 rounds. Obviously, it's not going to make the rifle work. But the theory is that they were just trying to look busy. Okay? And a lot of people claim that they fired over the heads of the enemy on purpose. Because they didn't want to kill. Now the military, this wasn't a secret, they knew that. And they said, hey, if we're going to train an effective military, we've got to overcome this, man. We've got to figure out how to get these people to kill. Which means suppressing their empathy. Right? People don't want to kill. So what do? what do? We start training them to kill people. We use things like silhouetted targets and three-dimensional targets that pop up with heads filled with red paint that splatter. Make people react and shoot and stab and yell, kill, kill, kill. So we're pushing that empathy deep and replaced it with the reflex to kill, normalizing the kill. Brigadier General in World War II, he was, as a historian, went out and surveyed men after battlefields, battlefield after battlefield after battlefield. He surveyed thousands of men throughout the war. World War II, you know what he found? He found that only 15 to 20% of soldiers claimed that they actually used their weapon. 15 to 20%. It means that 80 to 85% of people dropped and ran. Or, and this is even more interesting, they chose more dangerous jobs like running ammunition or going to get water or being a runner to get messages or to be a stretcher bearer and run out into the fire. They would rather put themselves in harm's way, by running out into the battlefield and trying to pull somebody off than pick up a gun and fire at another human being. Isn't that fascinating? What does that say about us? What does that say? Look, to the military, that's appalling. That's appalling. So after this study, they started to put in place some of these techniques. Silhouette, the kill, 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 the identifying with the weapon, the blood, the live fire drills, right? Live fire, simulated battles. They changed the tactics. And what they found during Vietnam, that went up to 95% used their weapons in battle. It worked. It worked. PTSD went through the roof, okay, because people would come back. That instinct is still in there, and they're reconciling the empathy that's buried, trying to emerge, and then with the memories of what they saw and did. That's part of the theory. It's more complex than that. Part of the theory of what creates that twist gut. People come back and have to reflect. Think about that dynamic. But it makes a good soldier. And for better or for worse, soldiers seem to be necessary. Not my opinion, necessarily. I'm not disavowing or endorsing it. But we have a military, and so do most countries. And we need soldiers that don't drop their weapons. But think about what they have to do to get human beings to do that well. We can learn something about ourselves. We can learn to cultivate that empathy, to do the opposite. Wouldn't you rather do the opposite and say, well, I want to go in the other direction. I don't want to learn to suppress it. I want to learn to cultivate it. Right? And people that have empathy suppressed, they find elevated amounts of oxytocin and testosterone, believe it or not. All right? So if you've ever been in a physical match, right? Box, karate, football, lacrosse, whatever it is, and you find yourself being more aggressive and violent, right? There's elevated levels of testosterone in your system. So in day-to-day life, okay, where we're not in a competition, how do we learn to deal with our empathy and nurture it? How do we nurture it? To help make our lives more rewarding, but then to help to make the world a better place. Right? A better place for my little pirate. Let's take a look at an example. You may or may not have heard of Kashia Thomas. 1996 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She found herself at a protest. There were hundreds of protesters that turned out as a counter-protest to a KKK rally. And she was very vocal in this counter-protest. She was 18, she's your age. right? This guy appears, the guy who she's over. You can see he has an SS tattoo. Right? He happens to have a Confederate flag, and he starts getting chased, right? He starts getting chased by people with the wooden signs. They're beating him, they're kicking him, they're punching him. He's running from them, all right? The counter-protesters, right? And she's one of them. You can see her. She's the one with the USA on her chest. She's running after him. You don't see her swinging a bat, though. What you see is her trying to protect him. Protect him? Isn't he getting what he deserves? Isn't that what you think people would say who were there? Yeah, we don't like him. He hates me. Why should I care about him? He's getting what he deserves. I'll sit back and watch. I'll sit back and enjoy it. And then I'll say, guess what I saw today? I saw this Nazi get beaten down. Right? And people were screaming, kill the Nazi, kill the Nazi. Harm's way. She crouched over him. She screamed at the crowd. And she protected him with her own body. As he covered his head because he was being beaten. He was dazed. Just take a look at some of these images of this 18-year-old girl. What can we learn from the Shiatans? What can we learn from her actions? Not premeditated. She didn't think that that's what she was going to do when she woke up that day to go protest the KKK. That she was going to go and save a neo-Nazi or a KKK member, a man with a Confederate flag and an offensive slogan and an SS tattoo. That's not what she wanted to do that day. But in an instant, her empathetic response kicked in, where other people, they were swept up with the contagion of emotion, which suppresses their empathy, the contagion, this riot, this mob mentality. She took the opposite. I want to think that I'd be her. I want you to be her. I want you to be her. I want you to be her. And you can't pre-think it. But you can prepare yourself, because you will be, and you have been in scenarios where someone is being marginalized, harassed, bullied, hurt, psychologically or physically. You've either done it, or you've done nothing to stop it. Nobody here has clean hands, myself included. I don't want to be there. And as your teacher and someone who cares about you and about what you do here, I want you to be her and to not be the silent accomplice. Let's take a look at her words. This is why she said she did it. Does that sound like it's motivated by anything we've been talking about today? And she jumped in that man's shoes. She said later, violence is violence. It doesn't matter what type of violence. I experience violence. Got to stop the cycle. With empathy came welling up in her and bursting out, and she put herself over top of him to save him in an instant. Are they a golf ball away, a drive away, 400 yards? There are hungry children right around here. One of the highest percentages of school lunches right in this county. They may get one lunch a day. They hate the weekends. You know why? No food. They hate the weekends. Imagine that. A school kid dreading the weekends. because that's when they go hungry. They hate vacation. There's a program that's trying to get underway here in Maine called the Backpack Program, that on Fridays they stuff some lunches in the backpack of those kids when they go home for the weekend, so that they have some food. The vacations are painful, and the summers even more, because there's nothing to eat. I have kids. I can't imagine what it would be like for them to come to me and say, "Daddy, I'm hungry," and for me to look at them and say, "Let's go watch a video." Because as a man, I can't provide them food. Or as a mother, she can't provide them food. Can you imagine? Can you jump in that person's shoes? I can. I can imagine it. I can touch that. It's inside me. Because I know what it feels like to love a child. But that's happening all around us. Right? We get marginalized them and say, "That's white trash." Oh, should disgust you. It should. It should. People across the pond, people across the world, in worse situations, eating things that were never food to begin with, or simply dying. Starvation. This is real. We don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. I want to think about hockey. I understand. I want to too. What do you do with this information? And why should you care? Hey, we're all on a ship together here. All right? We're like Bucky. Right? We're like my son watching Bucky sail away, being pulled away by Captain Hook and crying. Because he doesn't know what happens in the end. I'm not sad, because I know that the Disney episode ends by Bucky getting saved and coming back and everyone sings a song. He doesn't know that yet. He doesn't know how it ends. You know what? We're all floating away on a ship. We don't know how it ends. I might not make it home tonight. You might not make it to practice or through practice. It happens. It happens. It's real. We're floating on that ship and we don't know how the story ends. We don't. So what are we going to do while we're floating? Your generation and the millennials, they're different than the generations beforehand. I don't fear your generation. I love your generation. Because your generation doesn't want to be company men who go to work for GM for 40 years. You don't want to be that. You take those jobs and then quit and go backpack in Nepal. Okay? Why? Because you want your life and what you do to have meaning. You want that. You want it to have meaning. And meaning for you doesn't necessarily mean money. Money might happen, but you want more than that. You don't want to punch a clock. That's your generation. I love your generation. I love that wanderlust and that genuine desire for meaning. You've got it. So how do you find that meaning for yourself? I can't answer that question, and you can't yet either. But I can tell you this. Cultivating your ability to have empathy is going to be one of the keys to that answer.